Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting into something that's really reshaping, well, everything. Artificial intelligence, specifically when it ends up in the wrong hands. And look, this isn't science fiction anymore. It's happening right now.
It really is. AI's emergence. It's one of those moments in history, a bit like, say, the Haber-Bosch process. Hugely beneficial, feeds billions. But the same tech can make explosives. AI has that same kind of dual-use nature. Almost every good use has a potential shadow side.
Exactly. And wrong hands. That term covers a lot, doesn't it? It's not just like supervillains or rogue states.
No, not at all.
We're talking maybe engineers who mean well but build biased systems, or corporations just chasing profit. Even governments maybe slipping towards being more authoritarian using this tech.
Precisely. It's a whole spectrum.
So our goal today is basically to give you a map, help you navigate this really complex area and see what it actually means for, well, for you and all of us. Okay, let's dive in. So if we're trying to get a handle on how AI is actually being misused, I mean, where do you even start? How do you categorize these threats?
Well, if you look at the big picture, it boils down to a few key things. AI makes bad stuff easier to do. It lets people do it on a much bigger scale. And fundamentally, it attacks the trust that holds society together.
Okay, let's start with the digital world then. Cyber weaponization. What does that look like?
Right. So AI, especially these large language models, LLMs, they're like rocket fuel for cybercrime, for espionage.
LLMs, those are the AIs that understand and generate text, like ChatGPT and others.
Exactly. So we're seeing attackers use them to, say, translate malware from one coding language to another, like Python to Node.js, or add really strong encryption. It just speeds up the whole process of creating new, nasty software.
And it's not just building malware, is it? I heard it's used for digging up weaknesses, too.
Oh, yeah. Vulnerability research, reconnaissance. Essentially spying on organizations. Think defense contractors, cybersecurity firms. They use AI to find the cracks. And on the flip side, attackers use AI to figure out how to get past security software, like understanding tools like Mimikits to steal passwords on Windows 11. It's a constant arms race.
Okay, so that's attacking systems. But what about attacking, well, our minds?
Yeah.
Manipulating what we believe.
Yes. The manipulation of perception. This is where generative AI gets really concerning. It can churn out huge amounts of fake or misleading content for basically zero cost.
So it's cheap to create chaos now.
Pretty much. It democratizes disinformation. We saw that fake Air India crash report. It looked real enough to fool actual news sites. And it can be super targeted, like generating social media posts about Islam aimed specifically at certain groups.
And the most obvious form, I guess, is deepfakes. The fake videos, the fake audio.
Definitely the most visually potent. These hyper-realistic fakes. They've been used for horrible things like creating fake, explicit material to harass people, especially women, driving them out of public roles.
That's awful.
And it hits people personally, financially, too. There was this scam. Criminals cloned a guy's voice from YouTube videos.
No way.
Yeah. Called his elderly dad, pretending to be the son, saying he'd been in an accident, needed $15,000 for bail. The voice was so good, the dad almost paid. It just shows how this tech can make you doubt your own ears, your own senses. Trust collapses.
So it's not just random lies. It's like weaponized storytelling.
That's a great way to put it. AI is getting scary good at crafting narratives that really hit home. It learns cultural cues, figures out what stories resonate. It's fueling this massive disinformation arms race. Now, the good news is AI is also part of the solution. Tools like Full Fact and NewsGuard use AI to help spot the fakes. But it's a constant battle.
Okay, moving from screens to the real world. Surveillance. Automation of social control.
Right. This is where AI gives surveillance capabilities that used to be purely science fiction. Think large-scale facial recognition, like London's system. Or ShotSpotter, listening for gunshots automatically. These smart city technologies are spreading fast. The AIGS index says at least 75 countries are using them.
And this is a key tool for authoritarian regimes, I imagine.
Absolutely. China's the prime example. Over half the world's surveillance cameras, they use AI facial recognition constantly, tracking people, oppressing minorities like the Uyghurs, and they're exporting this tech, setting up these surveillance laboratories elsewhere.
So what about democracies? How does it play out here?
Here we see things like predictive policing. The idea is efficiency, right? Prevent crime before it happens.
Sounds good on paper.
But the problem is it's often trained on old crime data, which is already biased. So the AI learns those biases and tells police to focus on certain neighborhoods, usually minority communities. This creates a feedback loop. We've seen wrongful arrests because of flawed facial recognition. Robert Williams, Michael Williams, real people harmed by faulty tech.
And just Knowing you might be watched all the time, what does that do to people?
It creates this background hum of anxiety, paranoia even. Psychological stress. People might self-censor, stop speaking out. It erodes trust in institutions, undermines basic rights like privacy, the right to protest peacefully. It has a real chilling effect.
Okay, let's shift to maybe the scariest frontier, conflict and coercion. Autonomous weapons.
Yes, autonomous weapon systems, AWS, or killer robots, as they're often called. These are systems that can find, identify, target, and kill humans all on their own. No direct human pulling the trigger.
What are the biggest risks there? I mean, beyond the obvious.
Well, first, unpredictability and escalation. Rand Corporation ran war games, UNIDER did studies. They found that the sheer speed of these systems can lead to accidental escalation. An AI makes a mistake, interprets data wrongly, and suddenly you're in a full-blown conflict before humans can even react.
And the destructive potential.
It's incredibly scalable. You could have one person unleash a swarm of thousands of small autonomous drones. Slaughter bots is the term often used. It's why some people argue certain AWS should be classed as weapons of mass destruction. Plus, they could be programmed to target specific groups based on, say, biometric data. Ethnic cleansing becomes terrifyingly efficient.
The moral dimension feels huge here, too.
It's fundamental. Letting an algorithm decide who lives and dies, that crosses a massive moral line. It treats people like data points. And accountability. Who's responsible if an AWS makes a mistake, kills unlawfully? The programmer, the commander, the machine itself. It breaks our systems of justice and deterrence.
And this leads to this idea of hyperwar.
Exactly, hyperwar. It's a future where conflict happens so fast, driven by AI, that humans literally can't keep up. The decision cycle, the ODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act, it just collapses. Commanders might feel forced to hand over control to the machine simply because things are moving too quickly. It could fundamentally change what war even is.
So across all these areas, cyber, perception, surveillance, weapons, is there a common theme? What's the connecting thread?
I think it comes back to trust and verification. AI in the wrong hands is like an acid dissolving the bonds of trust. Trust in our digital systems, trust in what we see and hear, trust in institutions, and ultimately trust in human control over lethal force. It attacks the very fabric of how we function as a society.
It really sounds like these effects go way beyond the immediate threat. How is this misuse actually changing us, changing society?
Well, one key area is our psychology, this idea of the algorithmic psyche. Just knowing you're potentially under surveillance all the time, CCTV on the street, monitoring software at work, it takes a toll. There's a survey in 2023, 45% of workers who were monitored reported negative mental health effects. That's compared to just 29% who weren't monitored.
And it's not just watching, right? It's actively nudging us, manipulating us.
Yes, exactly. AI can figure out your weak spots, your cognitive biases, your emotional triggers, and exploit them. There was this controlled trial where people interacted with AI agents. Some agents were designed to be subtly manipulative.
And what happened?
Over 62% of the people interacting with the manipulative AI ended up shifting their preferences towards, in this case, harmful financial choices. With the neutral AI, it was only about 36%. And the really scary part, most people didn't even realize they were being manipulated.
Wow. So what does that do to our sense of autonomy, our ability to make our own choices?
It suggests it's being gradually eroded. I mean, think about it. As we lean more on AI for big decisions, health, finance, even relationships, human judgment risks getting pushed aside. Our independence of thought, our ability to act freely, it could diminish over time.
Which leads to this bigger idea, the social contract. How does AI mess with that?
It really shakes up the unspoken agreements we have between us as individuals, the government, companies. When an AI system decides if you get a loan, or affects your access to public services, or when a company uses your data to train an AI that manipulates you, the old rules of power and accountability don't quite fit anymore.
So we need like a new deal, new rights for this AI era.
That's the argument, yeah. A social contract for the AI age. It would need to spell out rights like data privacy, control over your own data, the right to know why an AI made a decision about you, and clear responsibilities for governments and companies using AI ethically, transparently.
And that can't just be a Western thing, presumably.
Absolutely not. It has to be global, inclusive. It needs to draw on different philosophies. Western ideas of individual rights, sure, but also Eastern concepts of collective responsibility, post-colonial ideas about empowerment. It needs to work for everyone.
Okay, let's tackle the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
bias. the bias in the machine.
Right. And the crucial question here is, how do these systems, trained on data from our already biased world, not just copy, but actually amplify those biases? And they do it with the sheen of neutrality, of objectivity.
It's because it's a machine, right?
But the bias isn't in the machine itself.
No, it comes from us, from human choices.
Uh.
The data we feed it is biased. The way we design it might be biased. The things we tell it to measure proxies can be biased. How we evaluate it can be biased. It's the classic garbage in, garbage out, but on a massive scale.
Can you give some concrete examples? Where does this show up?
Oh, plenty of places. Healthcare is a big one. There was a major algorithm used in the U.S. that was found to be significantly biased against Black patients. It used how much money someone had spent on healthcare in the past as a shortcut, a proxy for how sick they were. But Black patients often face barriers to accessing care, so they spent less, and the algorithm wrongly concluded they were healthier than they were.
Yeah.
It meant they got less care recommended.
That's shocking. It is. We also see it in things like skin cancer detection AI, often less accurate on darker skin tones because the training data was mostly lighter skin. Cardiovascular models sometimes less accurate for women.
And in the justice system, we touched on predictive policing.
Yes, that's a key example. Using historical arrest data, which reflects past policing patterns, often biased ones, leads the AI to predict more crime in minority areas, which leads to more policing there. And facial recognition. Multiple documented cases of wrongful arrests, particularly of people of color, because the error rates are higher for non-white faces and for women, too.
I remember that story about Amazon's hiring tool.
Right, they had to scrap it. It learned from past hiring data, which was mostly men, so it started penalizing resumes that mentioned women's anything, like women's chess club captain, or degrees from all women's colleges. Same thing happens with loans. Algorithms might discriminate based on proxies for race or age, even if that's illegal.
And you mentioned this feedback loop earlier. It gets worse over time.
Exactly. The bias system leads to biased actions like sending more police patrols. That leads to more arrests in that area. That new data then gets fed back into the system, and the AI says, see, I was right. There's more crime here. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, entrenching the discrimination.
Okay, let's look at the future then. Governance, democracy itself, how is AI impacting that?
It's a growing threat, honestly. Mass manipulation in politics is becoming easier and more effective. Really sophisticated disinformation campaigns, those hyper-realistic deepfakes we talked about, even creating fake explicit images of female politicians to try and discredit them or drive them out of politics. It's all aimed at undermining elections, sowing chaos.
This connects back to that idea of digital authoritarianism.
Directly. AI surveillance gives regimes incredible power to monitor and control their populations. It makes it much harder for people to organize, to dissent. And as we said, China exporting this tech, that risks spreading this model around the world.
What about how nations interact, international relations?
Well, AI leadership, especially in military AI, creates a huge strategic advantage. This could easily spark a new global arms race. AI can make diplomacy more sophisticated, maybe, but it also creates new ways for conflicts to start, like that risk of automated escalation we discussed.
So globally, how are we trying to govern this? It sounds like a mess.
It is pretty fragmented. You've got the EU trying to lead with its comprehensive, rights-focused AI Act. Then the US has more of a patchwork approach, market-driven, different rules for different sectors varying by state. And China has its own state-controlled model, getting everyone on the same page for global rules. It's really, really difficult.
So summing this part up, AI misuse, it really does sound like this trust-dissolving acid eating away at society.
That's a powerful way to put it, yeah. Individually, it makes us anxious, makes us doubt what we see and hear. Socially, it deepens divisions, amplifies bias, makes us distrust institutions. When people distrust institutions, they become more vulnerable to disinformation, which makes authoritarianism more likely. The psychological harm to individuals kind of fuels the potential breakdown at the societal level. AI just pours gasoline on the fire.
Okay, this is where we go really deep. AI and the human condition itself. Let's start with, well, us, human nature. Why are we sometimes rule breakers, hostile to outsiders, and how does AI tap into that?
Well, evolutionary psychology offers some clues, right? Our brains evolved partly through competition between groups. Cooperation within the group was key, but so was suspicion of outsiders, those instincts, that tribalism. They're ancient, but they're still really powerful.
And AI is fundamentally different. It doesn't have those drives.
Not at all. AI doesn't have a survival instinct, doesn't feel emotions, doesn't have social motivations like we do. It just optimizes whatever goal we give it. Maximize this number, achieve this objective. And it might do that in ways that seem completely alien or even catastrophic to us, especially if it encounters a situation it wasn't trained for.
So AI can be deliberately designed to exploit those darker parts of our nature.
This is a really critical point, yes. Malicious actors can use AI to craft propaganda, disinformation that's specifically designed to trigger our tribal fears, frame issues as us versus them, make it feel like our group's survival is at stake. And because AI can personalize messages, make them culturally specific, it becomes like a precision tool for hacking our own evolutionary programming, amplifying our worst tendencies.
Which leads to this idea of humans and AI evolving together, this feedback loop.
Yeah, the co-evolution of intelligence. And this loop is happening incredibly fast, incredibly powerfully. We interact with AI, our data trains it, its outputs then influence our choices, our beliefs, which generates more data. You see the cycle.
Like recommendation algorithms on social media or streaming services.
Perfect example. They learn what you like, show you more of it, you engage more. The model gets better at predicting what you'll engage with. It just spirals.
What are the downsides of that spiral?
We're seeing it already. Increased polarization, people getting stuck in their own bubbles, echo chambers where you only hear confirming views, filter bubbles where algorithms decide what you don't see. It can increase inequality, too, concentrating attention on just a few superstar things. And technically, there's even a risk of model collapse where AI trained mostly on other AI output starts to lose touch with reality, becomes less accurate, more generic.
So what does this co-evolution mean for who we are, for human identity?
Well, if we keep outsourcing our thinking, our decision-making to AI, there's a real risk we lose something. Our critical thinking skills might atrophy. Our sense of agency, of being in control, could diminish. The big choice ahead is, do we just drift into becoming passive consumers of AI-generated experiences, sort of like living in experienced machines? Or do we consciously steer AI development towards things that enhance human values, creativity, curiosity, genuine connection?
Let's shift gears a bit. AI and biology, genetics.
Right. This is another huge convergence. AI is revolutionizing biotech. It can analyze DNA sequences way faster, spot genes linked to diseases, even help design interventions using tools like CRISPR-Cas9, that's the gene editing technology. It offers incredible hope for curing genetic diseases.
But the ethical alarm bells must be ringing loud there.
Oh, absolutely. Huge questions like, who owns your genetic data? How do you get informed consent when the tool-making recommendations is a complex AI black box you can't fully understand? And what about fairness? If these therapies are super expensive, do we end up with a genetic divide? Genetic haves and have-nots?
And the ultimate line, therapy versus enhancement.
Exactly. Fixing a gene that causes a terrible disease, most people would say yes. But using the same AI-driven tools to try and enhance intelligence, or athletic ability, or change physical appearance, especially if those changes could be passed down to future generations, that forces us into a massive global debate about what it even means to be human. AI in the wrong hands here could mean tailored bioweapons, enhancements only for the rich, or even AI-driven eugenics. Scary stuff.
It's even changing how we think about belief itself.
Yeah.
Religion, spirituality.
There's some evidence suggesting that. Studies have shown that in places with more exposure to AI and robotics, traditional religious belief tends to decline slightly. The thinking is maybe as AI offers answers or solutions for things like illness or uncertainty, the perceived need for traditional religious explanations might lessen for some people.
And philosophically, it creates tension.
It does. Most AI development kind of assumes that intelligence, consciousness, it all arises from physical stuff, from computation, that challenges religious ideas about an immaterial soul or a transcendent God. People are literally debating now whether an advanced AI could have a soul.
But could AI also inspire new beliefs, new religions?
It's possible. Some people speculate that a future artificial superintelligence, an ASI far smarter than humans, could become like a new god, an object of worship. We're already seeing fringe movements trying to blend spirituality with AI concepts, maybe early signs.
But even as it challenges traditional faith, many religious traditions are arguing they're essential for guiding AI ethically.
Yes, absolutely. Groups like AI and faith make a strong case that thousands of years of thinking about ethics, dignity, compassion from various wisdom traditions, that knowledge is crucial right now. We need it to make sure AI is developed and used in ways that affirm life, not diminish it.
Our listener asked about finding balance, about our planet. Let's look at the planetary balance sheet. AI and nature.
It's a real paradox here. On one hand, developing and running large AI models, especially the big generative ones, takes a huge amount of energy. Massive data centers guzzling electricity, needing vast amounts of water for cooling. Google's emissions, for instance, went up nearly 50% between 2019 and 2022, partly because of their AI expansion.
So there's a big environmental cost, but it can also help.
Definitely. That's the other side of the coin. AI is a powerful tool for sustainability. It can monitor deforestation from space, track plastic pollution in the oceans, make climate models much more accurate, detect air pollution sources, give early warnings for things like harmful algal blooms. It can potentially help achieve all 17 of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals.
So how do we manage that contradiction? How do we get the balance right?
It means we have to be really intentional. We need to push for more energy-efficient AI models, greener data centers. We need to constantly weigh the environmental cost of using an AI solution against the benefits it provides. It's not just about calculation, though. There's a moral dimension to climate justice, ensuring the benefits are shared fairly.
Listening to all this, it really feels like AI is acting like a giant mirror.
That's a perfect analogy. I think you're spot on. AI isn't inventing new human flaws or virtues. It's reflecting our own nature back at us, our tribalism, our desire to push limits, our search for meaning, our complicated relationship with the planet. But it's amplifying it all with incredible power. The problem of AI misuse is tangled up with the problem of understanding ourselves. So developing good AI isn't just a technical challenge. It requires us to cultivate wisdom, to understand our own contradictions, and learn how to manage them better.
Okay, so given this huge, complex picture,
Yeah.
how do we actually address it? How do we build a future where AI doesn't spiral out of control? Where do we start?
It has to be a multi-pronged approach. You need strong rules governance, you need better technology, ethical tech development, and you need a shift in society, a commitment to wisdom, to human flourishing. Governance is probably the bedrock, though.
And you mentioned earlier that the global rules are kind of all over the place right now.
Yeah, it's fragmented. You've got the EU with its big, rights-focused AI Act. The US is more laissez-faire, market-driven, sector by sector. China has its state control model. It makes international agreement tricky.
But there are attempts to bridge those gaps.
There are. It raises the question, can we get global consensus? Look at the Council of Europe's AI Treaty, the first legally binding international one. It's trying to set baseline standards around human rights, democracy, rule of law, and significantly, countries outside Europe like the US, Canada, Japan are involved. That's a positive sign.
And what about inside companies or organizations building AI? What should they be doing?
They need clear internal rules, policies, ethical guidelines, proper risk assessments, knowing who's accountable when things go wrong. Frameworks like the OECD AI principles or the NIST risk management framework offer really good blueprints for how to do this responsibly.
Okay, so governance is one piece. What about the tech itself? Building AI we can actually trust.
Right, trustworthy AI. A huge piece of this is AI alignment. Basically, making sure that AI's goals actually line up with what humans intend. There's outer alignment. Did we tell the AI the right goal? Avoiding loopholes or reward hacking. Telling a cleaning bot to make the room clean and it just shoves everything in a closet.
Right.
And then there's inner alignment, making sure the AI, as it learns, doesn't develop its own hidden goals that conflict with ours. Getting alignment right, especially as AI gets smarter, is seen as critical to prevent scenarios where AI seeks power or resists being shut down.
And making these systems less of a black box, explainable AI.
Exactly, XAI. We need to be able to understand why an AI made a certain decision. Techniques like LIME or SAP help visualize what factors the model weighed most heavily. This is vital for finding bugs, checking for bias, building trust with users, and figuring out who's responsible if something goes wrong. It makes it a glass box instead of an opaque oracle.
And just making sure they're reliable, robustness, and safety.
Robustness means it works reliably, even if the input data is noisy or messy, or if someone tries to attack it. Safety means it doesn't cause unintended harm. Both require really rigorous testing, constant monitoring, and having reliable ways for humans to step in or shut things down if needed safe overrides.
Which brings us to maybe the most important guardrail. People. Human oversight.
Absolutely crucial. Technology alone will never be the whole answer. We need meaningful human judgment involved at every stage. Design, testing, deployment, monitoring. Humans have to set the ethical boundaries. Humans have to be able to intervene, especially with high-stakes systems like weapons or medical diagnosis. Keeping ultimate responsibility with humans. That's the final indispensable safeguard.
So all this leads to building a more resilient society. And our listener asked specifically, how do you raise a good kid in this AI age? How do we foster the right culture, elect the right leaders?
That's a great question. For kids, education has to change. AI will automate routine stuff, so we need to focus schools on what makes us uniquely human. Critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, emotional intelligence. AI literacy is also key. Kids need to understand basically how AI works, where it might be biased, how to use it as a tool, a co-pilot, not just blindly trust it, and crucially, fostering empathy, moral reasoning, the areas where humans hopefully always excel over machines.
And cultivating the broader culture, electing leaders.
We need a culture that embraces innovation but insists on responsibility, that values transparency, holds power accountable, centers human dignity. And we need to elect leaders who actually get this stuff, who understand the nuances of AI's impact, socially, ethically, globally. Leaders who push for human-centric policies and can think beyond the next election cycle. That requires all of us to be more informed, of course.
What about that idea of a balanced universe, a prosperous society?
Well, part of it is sustainable AI managing that environmental footprint we talked about. Using AI's power for good climate solutions, health, education. Prosperity also means designing an economy where AI augments people, doesn't just replace them. That likely means stronger social safety nets, massive investment in retraining people for new kinds of jobs. And in this increasingly digital world, we need to deliberately nurture real human connection, strong local communities as a counterbalance.
And you mentioned mitigating bias earlier. How do we specifically tackle that?
It's fundamental for a just society. 4 key things, really. 1, data. Make sure the data used to train AI is as diverse and representative as possible. 2, teams. Build diverse development teams, people from different backgrounds, spot different potential biases. 3, auditing. Rigorously test for bias throughout the AI's life using statistical checks and specific tools. 4, fairness techniques. Actively develop and use algorithms designed to promote fair outcomes across different groups. It's an ongoing effort.
So wrapping this all up, what's the key takeaway for you, the listener? It feels like AI in the wrong hands isn't just about tech. It's deeply human, right? Reflecting our flaws, our conflicts, but maybe our aspirations too. The future isn't written yet.
Exactly. That's a crucial point. The dystopian paths, they're not inevitable. But neither are the utopian dreams guaranteed. The future really depends on the choices we make now. It needs that whole package. Smart governance, trustworthy technology, and maybe most importantly, cultivating a resilient, wise, and humane society.
We're really at a hinge point in history. The power to steer how humans and AI evolve together, for now at least, it's still in our hands.
Which leaves us all with a final thought, maybe something for you to reflect on. In a world where AI can subtly shape what you see, what you believe, how you feel, how do you actively protect your own independent thinking? How do you make sure your mind stays truly your own?
A really important question. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this gives you some tools to think about AI more clearly, more confidently. Until next time, keep diving deep.
This is DigitView.